What if I told you that some of the most beloved animals on Earth are actually terrible parents? I mean, we're talking about parenting choices so shocking that they'd make your worst childhood memories seem like a fairy tale. Today, we're diving deep into the wild world of nature's most questionable parenting decisions. And trust me, you're going to be absolutely stunned by what these creatures do to their own offspring. But before we jump into this mind-blowing journey, let me set the stage for you. We've all grown up with these heartwarming nature documentaries showing us the beautiful bond between animal parents and their babies, right? The devoted mother bird feeding her chicks, the protective lion defending her cubs, the caring elephant nurturing her calf. Well, what if I told you that's only half the story? What if some animals have parenting strategies that are so brutal, so seemingly cruel, that they completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the animal kingdom? In this video, I'm going to reveal 4 shocking examples of animal parenting that will leave you questioning everything. We're talking about parents who literally abandon their newborns to fend for themselves, mothers who choose favorites and let the others die, fathers who become the most unlikely caregivers in the most bizarre ways, and parents who turn their own children into unwilling servants. And here's the kicker. These aren't accidents or mistakes. These are actual evolutionary strategies that have been perfected over millions of years. I've spent countless hours researching these incredible stories, diving into scientific studies and expert observations to bring you the most shocking parenting behaviors in the natural world. By the end of this video, you'll never look at these animals the same way again. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the dark side of nature that nobody talks about. Let's start with one of the most shocking examples of parental abandonment in the entire animal kingdom. Picture this. You're a tiny, helpless creature barely the size of a pebble, and your mother just drops you off in what's essentially a puddle and walks away forever. No goodbye, no looking back, just straight-up abandonment. Welcome to the world of reed frog parenting, and it's about to blow your mind. Now, reed frogs are these incredibly vibrant little amphibians that live across Africa. They're absolutely stunning to look at. With colors so bright, they seem almost artificial. But don't let their beauty fool you, because when it comes to parenting, these creatures have mastered the art of the ultimate drop-and-go strategy. Here's how it works, and prepare yourself, because this is going to sound absolutely ruthless. The female reed frog finds herself a temporary pool of water. We're talking about puddles that form after heavy rain, small ponds that might disappear in a matter of weeks. Basically the most unstable real estate you could imagine for raising a family. And this is where she decides to lay her precious eggs. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. The moment those eggs are laid, the mother reed frog just leaves. Gone. Vanished. She doesn't stick around to protect them. She doesn't come back to check on them. She doesn't even give them a second thought. Can you imagine? Your own mother just dropping you off and disappearing forever? Now, you might be thinking, that's absolutely horrible. How could any parent be so heartless? And I get it. From our human perspective, this seems like the worst possible parenting strategy. But here's where nature gets absolutely fascinating, because this seemingly cruel abandonment is actually a stroke of genius. Think about it this way. These temporary pools that seem so dangerous and unstable are actually the perfect nurseries. Why? Because they're completely free of the predators that would normally feast on defenseless eggs and tadpoles. The bigger fish, the hungry insects, the other creatures that would turn these babies into lunch simply can't live in these temporary water sources. It's like choosing the most remote, isolated location possible to keep your children safe. And there's more. These puddles are absolutely teeming with microscopic life. We're talking about a buffet of nutrients and tiny organisms that provide everything a growing tadpole needs to develop and thrive. The mother reed frog isn't abandoning her children in a wasteland. She's actually placing them in the equivalent of a 5-star nursery with room service. But the real genius of this strategy becomes clear when you think about timing. As these temporary pools start to dry up, something incredible happens. The tadpoles, sensing that their watery home is disappearing, rapidly undergo metamorphosis. They transform into young frogs just in time to hop away and continue their lives on land. It's like nature's own perfect timer, ensuring that these youngsters are ready to face the world exactly when they need to be. So, what looks like terrible parenting is actually an incredibly sophisticated survival strategy. The reed frog mother is playing a numbers game, maximizing the chances that her offspring will survive by placing them in the safest possible environment and letting nature do the rest. But if you think that's shocking, wait until you hear about our next example of questionable parenting. We're talking about one of the most beloved animals on the entire planet. Creatures that are literally symbols of conservation and cuteness. I'm talking about giant pandas, and their parenting strategy is going to absolutely floor you. Everyone loves pandas, right? They're fluffy, they're adorable, they spend their days munching bamboo and rolling around like living teddy bears. But when it comes to raising their young, pandas have a parenting approach that would make reality TV producers weep with joy. We're talking about the ultimate survival competition, where only one child gets to win. Here's how this plays out, and it's going to sound absolutely brutal. A panda mother typically gives birth to 2 cubs, 2 adorable, tiny, helpless little bundles of fur that are completely dependent on their mother for survival. But here's the shocking part. In the wild, she almost always chooses just one to focus on. That's right. She literally picks a favorite and abandons the other. Now, before you start thinking that panda mothers are just heartless creatures, you need to understand what's actually happening here. When panda cubs are born, they're about the size of a stick of butter. Seriously, we're talking about creatures so tiny and helpless that they can't even regulate their own body temperature. They're basically pink, hairless little beings that need constant care just to survive their first few weeks of life. The mother panda looks at these 2 tiny creatures and makes what might be the most difficult decision in the animal kingdom. She evaluates which cub seems stronger, which one has the better chance of survival, and then she commits everything to that one baby. All her energy, all her attention, all her resources go to ensuring that her chosen cub has the absolute best chance of making it to adulthood. Meanwhile, the other cub is essentially left to fend for itself. And here's the heartbreaking part: it almost never survives. Without the constant warmth, feeding, and protection that its sibling receives, the abandoned cub simply can't make it in the harsh realities of the wild. From our human perspective, this seems absolutely devastating. How could a mother choose between her own children? But from an evolutionary standpoint, this strategy makes perfect sense. Raising even one panda cub requires an enormous amount of energy and resources. These mothers need to nurse constantly, keep their babies warm, protect them from predators, and teach them everything they need to know about survival. If a panda mother tried to split her attention between two cubs, there's a very real chance that both might not receive enough care to survive. By focusing all her efforts on one cub, she maximizes the chances that at least one of her offspring will make it to adulthood and carry on her genetic legacy. The chosen cub receives incredibly intensive care. The mother panda cradles her baby constantly, keeping it warm against her body. She nurses it frequently, ensuring it gets all the nutrition it needs to grow strong. She grooms it meticulously, keeping it clean and healthy. As the cub grows bigger, she teaches it how to climb, how to find the best bamboo, and how to navigate their forest home. This level of focused attention creates an incredibly strong bond between mother and cub. The baby panda receives what amounts to VIP treatment, getting the kind of one-on-one care that ensures it develops into a healthy, capable adult. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and bodyguard all rolled into one devoted parent. But the sacrifice is undeniable. For every panda that receives this incredible level of care, another doesn't make it. It's nature's version of putting all your eggs in one basket. And while it might seem harsh, it's actually been working for pandas for millions of years. What makes this even more fascinating is that this isn't a conscious decision in the way we understand human choices. The panda mother is following deeply ingrained instincts that have been shaped by countless generations of evolution. Her brain is essentially programmed to make this choice because it's the strategy that has proven most successful for her species' survival over time. And here's something that might surprise you. In captivity, where resources are abundant and veterinary care is available, both panda cubs can often be saved. Zookeepers and wildlife experts have developed techniques to rotate the cubs, ensuring both receive maternal care or even hand-raising the abandoned cub. This shows us that the harsh choice panda mothers make in the wild isn't about lack of love or caring. It's purely about survival in a world where resources are limited. The bond between a panda mother and her chosen cub becomes incredibly intense over the following months. Picture this devoted parent spending literally every waking moment focused on this one precious baby. She carries the cub everywhere, positioning it perfectly on her chest or cradling it in her massive paws like the most precious treasure on earth. When the cub needs to eat, she's right there. When it gets cold, she wraps her entire body around it like a living blanket. When danger approaches, she becomes a fierce protector, ready to take on anything that threatens her baby. This isn't just casual parenting. This is helicopter parenting taken to an extreme level that would make the most overprotective human parents look relaxed. The panda mother anticipates her cub's every need before it even knows it has that need. She's constantly grooming, constantly adjusting position, constantly making sure her baby is comfortable and thriving. As months pass, you start to see the incredible results of this intensive parenting strategy. The chosen cub grows strong and healthy, developing the skills and confidence it needs to eventually survive on its own. By the time it's ready to leave its mother, this young panda has received such focused attention that it's essentially been given a master class in panda survival. But let's shift gears completely, because our next example of questionable parenting takes us into territory that's going to make your skin crawl. We're leaving the world of cute, fluffy mammals and diving straight into the realm of insects, where parenting gets so bizarre and disturbing that it sounds like something out of a horror movie. Meet the burying beetles, and trust me when I say their parenting strategy is unlike anything you've ever heard before. These creatures have turned child-rearing into what can only be described as a macabre family business, and the details are going to absolutely shock you. Picture this scenario. You're walking through a forest and you come across a small dead animal, maybe a mouse, maybe a bird, something that has recently died. Most creatures would either avoid it or maybe scavenge a quick meal. But burying beetles, they see this as the ultimate real estate opportunity. They've just found the perfect nursery for their future children, and they're about to do something with that corpse that will blow your mind. Here's where things get absolutely wild. A pair of burying beetles will work together like the most efficient construction crew you've ever seen. They start digging underneath and around this dead animal, literally burying it beneath the soil. But this isn't just random digging. This is precision engineering. They're creating an underground chamber with this corpse as the centerpiece, and what they do next is both fascinating and deeply disturbing. The beetles completely strip away any fur or feathers from the carcass. They're basically giving this dead animal the most thorough grooming it's ever received. Then, and this is where it gets really creepy, they cover the entire body with special secretions that work like nature's own embalming fluid. These antibacterial chemicals preserve the corpse and keep it from rotting too quickly. They're essentially creating a fresh food storage system underground. Once their gruesome nursery is perfectly prepared, the female burying beetle lays her eggs right next to this preserved carcass. Can you imagine? These beetle babies are literally born next to a dead body that their parents have carefully prepared and preserved just for them. It's like the most morbid room service arrangement in the entire animal kingdom. When the eggs hatch, the larvae find themselves in what amounts to an all-you-can-eat buffet. They're surrounded by fresh preserved meat that their parents have specifically prepared for their consumption. And here's where the parenting gets even more intense. Both beetle parents stick around to actively feed their babies. But the really shocking part comes when resources get tight. If there are too many larvae for the available food supply, the parent beetles make a decision that would horrify any human parent. They actually reduce the number of their own children. Yes, you heard that right. These beetle parents will eliminate some of their own offspring to ensure that the remaining babies have enough food to survive and thrive. From our perspective, this sounds absolutely monstrous. What kind of parent would harm their own children? But from an evolutionary standpoint, this brutal strategy makes perfect sense. If all the larvae tried to survive on insufficient food, there's a good chance that none of them would make it to adulthood. By reducing the number of mouths to feed, the parent beetles ensure that at least some of their genetic legacy survives. The surviving larvae receive incredibly attentive care from their parents. The adult beetles actively feed them, protect them from other predators, and maintain their underground nursery to keep it safe and clean. It's like having the most devoted parents imaginable, except their idea of the perfect nursery happens to be an underground tomb with a decomposing corpse as the main feature. This intensive parental care continues until the larvae are strong enough to pupate and eventually emerge as adult beetles. By that time, they've been given everything they need to survive in their harsh world. Plenty of food, constant protection, and parents who are willing to make the hardest decisions to ensure their success. The burying beetle strategy represents one of nature's most resource-efficient parenting methods. These insects have figured out how to turn death into life using what other creatures see as waste or something to be avoided as the foundation for raising the next generation. It's simultaneously brilliant and deeply disturbing, showing us just how different survival strategies can be from our human perspective. But if you think burying beetles have a weird approach to parenting, wait until you hear about our final example. We're about to explore a parenting situation so backwards, so completely opposite to everything we consider normal, that it's going to challenge every assumption you have about family roles in the animal kingdom. I'm talking about seahorses, those delicate, magical-looking creatures that drift through our oceans like living fairy tale characters. But when it comes to having babies, seahorses have completely flipped the script on traditional parenting roles in a way that's going to absolutely astound you. Here's the setup, and prepare yourself, because this is going to sound like science fiction. In the seahorse world, it's not the females who get pregnant and give birth. Instead, the male seahorses are the ones who carry the babies, go through pregnancy, and experience what can only be described as labor and delivery. Yes, you heard that correctly. Male seahorses get pregnant. But the process of how this happens is even more incredible than you might imagine. During mating, the female seahorse doesn't just lay eggs somewhere safe and walk away. Instead, she performs what amounts to the most intimate transfer in the animal kingdom. She deposits her eggs directly into a special pouch on the male's belly, kind of like nature's own kangaroo pouch, but designed specifically for pregnancy. Once those eggs are safely inside his pouch, the male seahorse takes on a role that's completely unique in the animal kingdom. His body immediately begins treating those eggs like they're his own biological offspring. He fertilizes them internally, and then his pouch becomes essentially a seahorse womb, providing everything the developing babies need to grow and thrive. The transformation that happens inside the male seahorse's pouch is absolutely mind-blowing. This isn't just carrying eggs around like some kind of living storage container. The male's body undergoes incredible changes to support his developing babies. His pouch swells dramatically as the embryos grow, and his entire metabolism shifts to provide oxygen and nutrients through the pouch walls. He's literally becoming a living life support system for dozens of tiny seahorses. And here's where it gets even more incredible. The male seahorse experiences something remarkably similar to what human mothers go through during pregnancy. His body chemistry changes. His behavior adapts to protect his precious cargo, and he becomes incredibly careful about his movements to avoid any harm to his developing offspring. Picture this delicate creature floating through coral reefs and seagrass beds, carrying what might be hundreds of babies in his swollen belly. The pregnancy can last anywhere from a few weeks to several months, depending on the species and water conditions. During this entire time, the male seahorse is essentially living for those babies growing inside him. He adjusts his feeding patterns, becomes more cautious about predators, and his entire existence revolves around successfully bringing his offspring into the world. But here's where the story takes a turn that's going to shock you. When it's finally time for those baby seahorses to be born, the male goes through what can only be described as labor. His body contracts rhythmically, he grips onto seagrass or coral with his tail, and he literally pushes these tiny, fully formed seahorses out of his pouch, one by one. It's like watching the most unusual birth in the entire animal kingdom. And here's the part that's going to make your jaw drop. The moment those baby seahorses emerge from their father's pouch, they're completely on their own. We're talking about creatures so tiny they're almost transparent, no bigger than your fingernail, and they immediately have to fend for themselves in one of the ocean's most dangerous environments. The male seahorse doesn't stick around to teach them how to hunt. He doesn't protect them from predators. He doesn't even acknowledge their existence. After months of the most devoted pregnancy care imaginable, he essentially becomes a stranger to his own children the second they're born. These newborn seahorses drift away into the vast ocean, and many of them will never survive their first day of life. Can you imagine the contrast here? For months, these babies received the most intimate protective care possible, literally living inside their father's body where nothing could harm them. Then suddenly, they're thrust into a world where they have to immediately start hunting microscopic prey, avoiding being eaten by countless predators, and navigating ocean currents that could sweep them away forever. From a human perspective, this seems like the ultimate parenting contradiction. How can a father be so incredibly devoted during pregnancy and then completely abandon his children the moment they're born? But in the seahorse world, this strategy actually makes perfect evolutionary sense. Think about it this way. The male seahorse has already invested months of his life and enormous amounts of energy ensuring these babies developed safely. By the time they're born, they're fully formed miniature versions of adult seahorses equipped with all the instincts and abilities they need to survive independently. Any additional parental care would actually put both the father and the babies at greater risk. The ocean is full of predators that would love nothing more than to find a protective parent seahorse with a bunch of helpless babies nearby. By immediately dispersing after birth, these young seahorses spread out across a wide area, making it much harder for predators to find and eat large numbers of them at once. It's like nature's own version of not putting all your eggs in one basket. Plus, the male seahorse needs to recover from his pregnancy and potentially prepare for another mating cycle. Seahorses can actually become pregnant multiple times throughout a breeding season, which means this devoted father might go through this entire process several times in a single year. His body needs time to rest and rebuild its resources between pregnancies. But here's what makes this parenting strategy even more fascinating. It's actually incredibly successful. Despite what seems like abandonment, seahorses have been thriving in our oceans for millions of years, using exactly this approach. The combination of intensive prenatal care followed by complete independence has proven to be an evolutionary winning formula. The baby seahorses that do survive those first critical days and weeks develop into incredibly resilient creatures. They've been forced to become completely self-reliant from the moment of birth, which means they develop survival skills much faster than animals that receive extended parental care. It's like nature's version of tough love taken to the absolute extreme. And there's something almost poetic about the way seahorse fathers approach pregnancy. While the babies are developing, these males become the most attentive, expectant parents you could imagine. They're constantly adjusting their position to optimize conditions inside their pouch. They're careful about what they eat to ensure proper nutrition reaches their offspring. And they're incredibly protective of their precious cargo. Some researchers have observed pregnant male seahorses actually communicating with their developing babies. They'll gently massage their pouches or create subtle vibrations that seem to stimulate movement from the embryos inside. It's like they're bonding with their unborn children in ways that are both touching and scientifically fascinating. But the moment of birth changes everything instantly. That devoted protective father transforms into what essentially becomes a stranger to his own offspring. The babies emerge into the water column and immediately begin their solitary journey through life, while their father swims away without a backward glance. What makes this even more remarkable is that many seahorse species are actually monogamous, meaning the same male and female will mate repeatedly throughout their lives. So while the father shows no interest in his children after birth, he maintains a strong pair bond with their mother. They'll perform elaborate courtship dances, synchronize their movements, and eventually go through the entire pregnancy process again and again. This creates one of nature's most unique family dynamics. Parents who are completely devoted to each other and to the process of creating offspring, but who have absolutely no relationship with their children once they're born. It's like having parents who are obsessed with pregnancy and childbirth, but have zero interest in actually raising kids. The survival rates for newborn seahorses are absolutely brutal. Depending on the species, anywhere from 90 to 99% of babies don't survive to adulthood. But the few that do make it become incredibly hardy, adaptable creatures that are perfectly equipped for life in their challenging marine environment. These parenting strategies we've explored today, from the seemingly negligent reed frogs to the heartbreakingly selective pandas, from the macabre burying beetles to the contradictory seahorses, show us just how diverse and surprising nature's approaches to raising young can be. What looks like terrible parenting from our human perspective often turns out to be incredibly sophisticated survival strategies that have been refined over millions of years of evolution. Each of these species has found a way to maximize their offspring's chances of survival in their specific environment, even if their methods seem shocking or cruel to us. The reed frogs create perfect temporary nurseries. The pandas focus all their energy on one chosen cub. The burying beetles turn death into life. And the seahorses provide intensive prenatal care followed by complete independence. These strategies remind us that nature doesn't operate according to our human values and emotions. There's no concept of fairness, no worry about hurt feelings, no concern about what seems morally right or wrong. There's only the relentless drive to pass genetic material to the next generation and ensure that at least some offspring survive to continue the cycle. But perhaps most importantly, these examples show us that successful parenting in nature comes in forms we would never expect or imagine. Sometimes the best parent is the one who walks away. Sometimes love means making impossible choices, and sometimes the most devoted care leads to the most abrupt separation. The animal kingdom continues to surprise us with strategies that challenge everything we think we know about family, care, and survival. These creatures have been perfecting their approaches for far longer than humans have existed, and their success proves that there's no single right way to ensure the next generation thrives. What seems like the worst parenting ever might actually be exactly what these species need to survive and flourish in their unique environments. Nature has a way of making the seemingly impossible work perfectly, even when it goes against every instinct we have about how families should operate. These incredible survival strategies we've just explored reveal something profound about the natural world that most people never consider. While we've been conditioned to think of good parenting as constant attention, protection, and nurturing, nature operates by completely different rules. The animal kingdom has developed parenting techniques that would seem absolutely unthinkable to us. Yet they've been working flawlessly for millions upon millions of years. But here's where things get even more mind-blowing. What we've covered so far is just scratching the surface of nature's most shocking parenting decisions. There are creatures out there using strategies so extreme, so seemingly backwards, that they make everything we've discussed look conventional by comparison. We're talking about parents who literally sacrifice their own lives for their children, species, where siblings are expected to commit fratricide, and animals that have turned their own bodies into living nurseries in ways that will absolutely horrify you. Let me take you deeper into this rabbit hole, because the more we explore these strategies, the more we realize that nature's approach to raising young is far more complex and brutal than we ever imagined. These aren't just isolated cases of weird animal behavior. These represent fundamental survival strategies that have been tested and perfected through countless generations of natural selection. Consider the incredible sacrifice that some spider mothers make for their offspring. Picture this scenario. You've just given birth to hundreds of babies, and your first instinct isn't to teach them or protect them. It's to offer yourself as their first meal. This isn't some tragic accident or moment of desperation. This is a calculated evolutionary strategy that certain spider species have been using successfully for millions of years. The process is both fascinating and deeply disturbing. These spider mothers spend weeks carefully preparing for their offspring's arrival, building elaborate webs and ensuring everything is perfect for their baby's emergence. But the moment those tiny spiderlings hatch, something incredible happens. The mother begins secreting special nutrients from her body, essentially turning herself into a living food source. At first, the babies simply feed on these secretions, much like mammals nursing from their mothers. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. As the spiderlings grow stronger and hungrier, they begin consuming their mother's body directly. We're talking about children literally eating their own parent alive, and the mother not only allows this, but actively encourages it. From our human perspective, this seems like the most horrific possible outcome of parenthood. Imagine giving your life not in some heroic moment of protection, but as a planned meal for your own children. Yet for these spider species, this strategy ensures that their offspring get the absolute best possible start in life. The mother's body provides concentrated nutrition exactly when the babies need it most, giving them the strength and energy required to survive their first critical weeks. The timing of this sacrifice is incredibly precise. The mother spider essentially programs her own death to coincide perfectly with her offspring's nutritional needs. It's like she's a living vending machine that dispenses herself at exactly the right moment to maximize her children's survival chances. But the sacrifice doesn't end with just providing food. As the mother's body is consumed, she's also transferring crucial antibodies and chemical compounds that help protect her babies from diseases and predators. It's the most intimate possible transfer of survival resources from one generation to the next. This strategy might seem extreme, but it's actually incredibly efficient from an evolutionary standpoint. Instead of the mother spending months hunting for food to feed her offspring while also trying to protect them from predators, she provides everything they need in one ultimate act of devotion. The spiderlings emerge from this experience incredibly well-nourished and strong, giving them a significant advantage in their harsh world. Now, if you think spider mothers have it rough, wait until you hear about the parenting nightmare that plays out in certain bird species. We're talking about families where sibling rivalry isn't just encouraged, it's literally a matter of life and death. These aren't accidental conflicts between brothers and sisters. These are species where parents deliberately set up their own children to fight each other to the death. Picture a nest high up in a tree where a bird mother has just laid 2 eggs. Both chicks hatch around the same time. Both are hungry and demanding food from their parents. Both seem to have equal chances of survival. But here's the shocking twist. The parents have no intention of raising both babies. Instead, they've created what amounts to a gladiatorial arena where only one chick will survive. The way this plays out is absolutely brutal. The parent birds will bring food to the nest, but instead of making sure both chicks get fed equally, they simply drop the food and let the babies fight over it. The stronger, more aggressive chick will attack its sibling, often pushing it out of the nest or preventing it from getting any food at all. What makes this even more disturbing is that the parents are right there watching this happen. They could easily intervene. They could bring enough food for both chicks. They could separate the fighting siblings. But they don't. They stand by and watch as one of their own children systematically destroys the other. This isn't neglect or accident. This is deliberate strategy. These bird parents are using their own offspring to determine which one is most fit for survival. It's like nature's own version of survival of the fittest, played out in the most intimate family setting possible. The surviving chick, having proven its strength and aggression by defeating its sibling, receives incredibly intensive care from its parents. All the food, all the protection, all the attention that would have been split between 2 babies now goes to this one proven survivor. The result is often a remarkably strong and capable young bird that's been tested from the very beginning of its life. From an evolutionary perspective, this strategy ensures that only the strongest genetic traits get passed on to the next generation. Instead of potentially raising 2 weak offspring who might both struggle to survive in the wild, these bird parents guarantee that they're investing all their resources in one incredibly capable survivor. But the psychological implications are staggering when you think about it from the chick's perspective. Imagine your very first experience of life, being a fight to the death with your own sibling while your parents watch and do nothing to help. The surviving chick learns from day one that life is about competition, aggression, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to secure resources. This creates birds that are incredibly self-reliant and competitive, traits that serve them well in harsh environments where food is scarce and predators are constant threats. These survivors have been literally forged in combat from the moment they hatched, making them some of the most formidable creatures in their ecosystems. The defeated sibling's fate varies depending on the species. Sometimes they're pushed from the nest and die from the fall. Sometimes they're simply prevented from eating until they starve. Sometimes the stronger sibling will actually attack and kill them directly. In every case, the parents treat this outcome as completely normal and expected. What's particularly chilling is how methodical this process can be. The dominant chick doesn't just randomly attack its sibling. It systematically controls access to food, pushes the weaker bird to the edges of the nest, and gradually weakens it over days or weeks. It's like watching a slow-motion execution carried out by someone who should be your closest family member. Yet this strategy has been so successful that it's evolved independently in multiple bird species around the world. These aren't related families that learned this behavior from each other. These are completely separate evolutionary lines that all discovered the same brutal solution to the challenge of raising offspring in environments with limited resources. The efficiency of this approach becomes clear when you compare these species to birds that try to raise multiple chicks simultaneously. In harsh environments, species that attempt to feed multiple offspring often end up losing all their babies when food becomes scarce. By ensuring only one incredibly strong chick survives, these gladiatorial bird parents actually achieve higher long-term reproductive success. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this strategy is how it affects the parent birds themselves. They show no signs of distress or conflict about watching one of their children destroy another. There's no mourning for the lost chick, no apparent emotional attachment to the defeated offspring. The moment one baby proves its dominance, the parents seamlessly shift all their attention to the survivor as if the other chick never existed. This emotional detachment might seem cold and heartless, but it's actually crucial for the strategy to work. If the parents became emotionally invested in both chicks, they might be tempted to intervene in the conflict, which would undermine the entire selection process. By remaining detached, they ensure that nature can run its course and identify the strongest offspring. Often grow up to become the surviving chick's exceptional parents themselves, having learned from day one that successful reproduction requires making hard choices about resource allocation. They understand instinctively that sometimes the cruelest decision is actually the kindest in the long run, ensuring that limited resources go to the offspring with the best chances of survival. Moving from the skies to the depths of our oceans, we encounter parenting strategies that push the boundaries of what we consider possible. Deep-sea creatures face challenges that are almost incomprehensible to land-dwelling animals. Crushing pressure, complete darkness, scarce food sources, and environments so extreme that survival itself seems miraculous. In these harsh conditions, some deep-sea parents have developed strategies that make everything we've discussed so far seem tame by comparison. We're talking about creatures that have turned their own bodies into living submarines for their offspring, parents who glow in the dark to attract food for their babies, and species where the very act of reproduction means certain death. Consider the bizarre world of certain deep-sea anglerfish, where the concept of family takes on meanings that would shock even the most open-minded biologist. In these species, the tiny male fish essentially becomes a living appendage of the much larger female, fusing his body permanently to hers, in what can only be described as the ultimate act of parental devotion. But this isn't a romantic partnership in any sense we understand. The male literally dissolves most of his own body to become nothing more than a sperm-producing organ attached to the female. He gives up his independence, his ability to feed himself, even his individual identity, all to ensure that when the time comes to reproduce, his genetic material will be immediately available. The female, meanwhile, carries multiple males attached to her body like living decorations. She provides them with nutrients through her bloodstream, essentially keeping them alive for the sole purpose of reproduction. When she's ready to spawn, these attached males immediately fertilize her eggs, ensuring maximum reproductive success in an environment where finding a mate might otherwise be impossible. This strategy represents the ultimate sacrifice of individual identity for reproductive success. The males give up everything that makes them independent creatures, while the female accepts the burden of keeping multiple partners alive indefinitely. It's like a living example of how extreme environments can push evolution to create solutions that seem more like science fiction than natural biology. The offspring from these unions are released into the dark depths of the ocean with no parental care whatsoever. They must immediately begin the struggle to find food, avoid predators, and eventually locate mates of their own in the vast darkness of the deep sea. The parents have invested everything in the act of reproduction itself, leaving nothing for child rearing. Another deep-sea parenting strategy that defies comprehension involves creatures that have turned bioluminescence into the ultimate babysitting tool. These parents create their own light shows to attract prey directly to their offspring, essentially becoming living lighthouses in the darkness of the ocean depths. The energy cost of producing light in these environments is enormous, yet these parents maintain their bioluminescent displays for weeks or months to ensure their babies have access to food. They're literally burning their own life force to create feeding opportunities for their offspring, often shortening their own lifespan significantly in the process. What makes this strategy even more remarkable is the precision involved. These parents don't just randomly flash lights. They create specific patterns and colors that attract exactly the right type and size of prey for their developing young. It's like having a neon restaurant sign that's perfectly calibrated to bring in customers who are exactly what your children need to eat. The coordination required for this strategy is mind-boggling. The parent must maintain the light display, position themselves correctly to maximize its effectiveness, and simultaneously protect their offspring from the very predators that might be attracted by the same lights meant to bring in food. It's a delicate balance that requires constant vigilance and enormous energy expenditure. These deep-sea parenting strategies highlight just how far evolution can push creatures when survival demands extreme solutions. In environments where traditional parenting approaches simply won't work, these species have developed techniques that seem to violate every rule we think we know about animal behavior. But perhaps most importantly, these examples show us that the definition of good parenting in nature is incredibly flexible and context-dependent. What works in the safety of a shallow pond won't work in the crushing depths of the ocean. What succeeds in environments with abundant resources fails completely when every calorie counts for survival. The deep-sea parents who sacrifice their own bodies, their independence, and their individual identities for their offspring aren't making these choices out of love or emotion as we understand them. They're following evolutionary programs that have been refined over millions of years to maximize reproductive success in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their strategies might seem alien and disturbing to us, but they represent the ultimate expression of life's drive to continue existing, no matter what obstacles stand in the way. These creatures have found ways to reproduce and raise offspring in conditions that would instantly kill most other forms of life, proving that nature's ingenuity knows no bounds when it comes to ensuring the survival of the next generation. As we've journeyed through these shocking examples of animal parenting, from abandonment to sacrifice to outright gladiatorial combat between siblings, one thing becomes crystal clear. Nature operates by rules that are completely foreign to our human understanding of family, care, and love. These strategies that seem cruel, heartless, or downright horrifying to us have actually been perfected over millions of years of evolution because they work. Every single one of these approaches, the reed frogs who abandon their eggs, the pandas who choose favorites, the spiders who offer themselves as meals, the birds who watch their children fight to the death, the deep-sea creatures who sacrifice their very identities, represents a solution that has been tested by the ultimate judge, survival itself. What makes these strategies even more fascinating is how they've shaped entire ecosystems and evolutionary paths. When we look at the broader picture, we start to see that these seemingly harsh parenting decisions have ripple effects that extend far beyond individual families. These approaches have influenced predator-prey relationships, shaped migration patterns, and even determined which species thrive in specific environments. But here's where things get really mind-bending. Some animals have taken the concept of questionable parenting to levels that make everything we've discussed look like gentle guidance. We're talking about species that have weaponized their own children, turned siblings into living tools, and created family hierarchies that would make medieval monarchies seem democratic. Let me introduce you to a parenting strategy that's going to make your head spin. Picture a world where parents don't just neglect their children or make them compete with each other. They actually turn their offspring into biological weapons. This isn't some dystopian fantasy. This is happening right now in nature, and the creatures doing it have perfected this approach over countless generations. Consider certain species of social insects where the concept of childhood doesn't exist in any way we'd recognize. The moment these creatures are born, they're immediately assigned roles that will define their entire existence. Some become workers, some become soldiers, and some become what can only be described as living suicide bombs. And here's the kicker. They have absolutely no choice in the matter. The parent queens of these colonies don't see their offspring as individuals with their own potential and futures. Instead, they view them as biological resources to be allocated according to the colony's needs. It's like having a factory that produces specialized tools rather than a nursery that raises children. Each newborn is immediately evaluated and assigned a function that will consume their entire life. The worker offspring are condemned to lives of endless labor, never reproducing, never experiencing anything beyond constant service to the colony. The soldier offspring are designed for combat and defense, their bodies modified from birth to be living weapons. And perhaps most disturbing of all, some offspring are literally programmed to explode when threatened, sacrificing their lives to protect the colony through biological warfare. From our human perspective, this represents the ultimate violation of individual rights and personal autonomy. These parents are essentially stealing their children's futures before they even have a chance to discover what those futures might hold. But from an evolutionary standpoint, this strategy has created some of the most successful species on the planet. The efficiency of these colonial systems is absolutely staggering. By removing individual choice and personal ambition from the equation, these insect societies can coordinate activities on a scale that makes human civilizations look chaotic by comparison. Every individual knows their role, performs it without question, and contributes to a collective success that ensures the colony's survival for generations. But the cost of this efficiency is the complete elimination of what we would consider individual identity or personal fulfillment. These offspring never get to explore their own interests, never get to choose their own paths, never get to experience the freedom of making their own decisions. They're born into predetermined roles and live their entire lives serving functions they never chose. What makes this even more disturbing is how perfectly these systems work. The colonies that employ these strategies often dominate their environments, outcompeting species that allow their offspring more individual freedom. The ruthless efficiency of predetermined roles creates societies that can respond instantly to threats, allocate resources with mathematical precision, and maintain order, even in the face of catastrophic losses. The parent queens who orchestrate these systems show no signs of emotional attachment to their individual offspring. They produce thousands or even millions of children, but they view each one purely in terms of its functional value to the colony. It's like having a parent who sees their children only as potential employees in the family business, except the business is survival and the employment is mandatory and lifelong. This approach extends beyond just work assignments. These parents also control their offspring's physical development, using chemical signals to determine which children will grow large and strong, which will remain small and agile, and which will develop specialized body parts for specific functions. It's biological engineering on a scale that makes human genetic manipulation look primitive. The children have no say in these modifications. Their bodies are altered before they're even fully developed, locked into forms that will determine not just what they do with their lives, but what they're physically capable of doing. Some develop massive jaws for combat, others get wings for scouting, and still others are designed for specific types of construction work. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this parenting strategy is how it's passed down through generations. The offspring who do eventually reproduce, typically only a select few who become new queens or males, inherit not just the genetic programming for this system, but also the behavioral patterns that perpetuate it. They grow up in these rigidly controlled societies and then go on to create identical systems for their own offspring. It's like a cycle of predetermined destiny that repeats endlessly, with each generation accepting that their children's lives will be planned out from birth according to the colony's needs rather than the children's own potential or desires. The system becomes self-perpetuating, creating societies where individual freedom is not just discouraged, it's literally impossible. Yet these colonial species represent some of the most successful organisms on Earth. Their colonies can last for decades or even centuries, surviving environmental changes that wipe out more individualistic species. Their ability to mobilize massive workforces instantly, coordinate complex construction projects, and defend against threats makes them incredibly resilient in the face of challenges. This success raises uncomfortable questions about the relationship between individual freedom and collective survival. While we value personal autonomy and individual choice, these insect societies demonstrate that completely eliminating these concepts can create incredibly efficient and successful communities. It's a trade-off that challenges many of our assumptions about what makes a society successful. The offspring in these systems never experience what we would consider rebellion or resistance to their assigned roles. They're biochemically programmed to find satisfaction in performing their designated functions, creating a kind of artificial contentment that ensures social stability. It's like having a society where everyone is genuinely happy with their predetermined role, but only because they've been chemically conditioned to feel that way. Moving from these colonial nightmares to an entirely different type of disturbing parenting, let's explore creatures that have turned the concept of family protection into something that would make horror movie writers jealous. These are parents who don't just defend their offspring from external threats. They actively use their children as shields, decoys, and expendable resources in ways that redefine the meaning of family sacrifice. Picture this scenario. A parent animal is faced with a dangerous predator that threatens both them and their offspring. Most creatures would either fight to defend their children or flee while trying to keep the family together. But some species have developed a strategy that involves deliberately putting their own children in harm's way to increase the parents' chances of survival. These parents will actually push their offspring toward predators while escaping in the opposite direction. It's not accidental panic or confusion. It's a calculated decision to use their children as distractions while they make their getaway. From our perspective, this represents the ultimate betrayal of parental responsibility. These parents are literally feeding their own children to predators to save themselves. But here's where the evolutionary logic becomes both clear and disturbing. If the parent survives, they can potentially produce more offspring in the future. If they sacrifice themselves trying to save their current children, both the parent and the offspring might die, ending their genetic line completely. By sacrificing some offspring to ensure their own survival, these parents are playing a longer-term reproductive game. The cold calculation involved in these decisions is staggering. These parents are essentially running cost-benefit analyses in real time, determining which children are most expendable and which offer the best chances of distracting predators long enough for escape. It's like having a parent who views their children as a diversified investment portfolio, willing to cut losses on some holdings to protect the overall strategy. What makes this strategy even more chilling is how some species have evolved specific behaviors to make their offspring more effective as predator distractions. Some parents will actually injure their own children slightly, making them easier targets for predators, while simultaneously making them more likely to draw attention away from the escaping parent. Other species have developed elaborate deception tactics where parents will mimic the distress calls of their own offspring to confuse predators about which direction the real children went. They're essentially impersonating their own babies to create chaos that covers their escape, leaving the actual offspring to fend for themselves in the confusion. The psychological implications of these strategies are mind-boggling when you consider them from the offspring's perspective. Imagine discovering that your own parent, the creature you depend on for protection and care, is willing to deliberately put you in mortal danger to save themselves. It's the ultimate violation of the trust that should exist between parent and child. Yet some of these offspring have evolved counter-strategies to their parents' betrayal. Certain species have developed the ability to recognize when their parents are about to use them as decoys, and they've learned to scatter or hide before the parent can implement their escape plan. It's like an evolutionary arms race between parents and children within the same family. This creates family dynamics that are unlike anything we see in human societies. These offspring grow up knowing that their own parents view them as expendable resources rather than precious individuals to be protected. They develop survival strategies that assume they'll receive no help from their families and might even face active betrayal from the creatures that should care for them most. The parents, meanwhile, show no signs of emotional conflict about these decisions. They don't appear to experience guilt or regret about sacrificing their children for their own survival. From their perspective, they're simply making rational decisions that maximize their long-term reproductive success, even if it means short-term losses of current offspring. These strategies become even more disturbing when you realize how they affect entire family structures. In some species, older offspring learn to anticipate their parents' betrayal tactics and will actually abandon younger siblings preemptively, knowing that staying with the family group makes them more likely to be used as predator bait. This creates a breakdown of family cohesion that goes beyond simple neglect or abandonment. These families actively work against each other's survival, with each member viewing the others as potential tools or obstacles rather than loved ones to be protected. It's like having a family where everyone is constantly plotting against everyone else for personal survival advantage. The success of these strategies in evolutionary terms demonstrates just how powerful the drive for genetic survival can be. These parents aren't making emotional decisions based on love or attachment. They're following biological programming that prioritizes long-term reproductive success over short-term family bonds. The results might seem monstrous to us, but they've been tested and proven effective over millions of years of natural selection. What's particularly striking is how these betrayal strategies have shaped the development of offspring in these species. The young animals that survive their parents' potential sacrifice often become incredibly self-reliant and suspicious of family bonds. They learn early that survival depends on individual cunning rather than family cooperation, creating adults who are exceptionally capable of independent survival, but completely incapable of forming trusting relationships. These survival skills serve them well in harsh environments where resources are scarce and predators are abundant. The offspring who make it to adulthood have been forged by betrayal into incredibly resilient creatures that can survive conditions that would devastate more trusting, family-oriented species. It's like natural selection has created a species of survivors who are simultaneously incredibly capable and completely isolated. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of these parenting strategies is how they challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature of family bonds. We tend to think of parental love and protection as universal instincts that exist across all species. But these creatures demonstrate that evolution can override even the most basic family loyalties when survival demands it. The parents who sacrifice their offspring aren't monsters or aberrations. They're successful examples of what happens when natural selection prioritizes long-term reproductive success over short-term family bonds. Their strategies work precisely because they're willing to make sacrifices that more emotionally attached parents couldn't bring themselves to make. This creates a paradox where the most successful parents, from an evolutionary perspective, are also the ones who would be considered the worst parents from an emotional or moral standpoint. They achieve reproductive success not despite their willingness to sacrifice their offspring, but because of it. Their coldness and calculation are features, not bugs, in the evolutionary program. As we continue to explore these shocking parenting strategies, we're forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that nature operates according to principles that often directly contradict our human values and emotions. The love, protection, and sacrifice that we consider essential elements of good parenting may actually be evolutionary luxuries that only work in environments with abundant resources and minimal threats. In the harsh realities where these creatures live, such emotional attachments might actually be counterproductive to long-term survival. The parents who can make cold, calculated decisions about sacrificing some offspring to protect their own reproductive future are the ones whose genes get passed on to subsequent generations. It's a brutal mathematics of survival that has no room for sentiment or emotional attachment. These examples force us to reconsider what we mean when we talk about successful parenting in nature. If success is measured purely by reproductive output and genetic survival, then these seemingly terrible parents are actually some of the most successful organisms on the planet. Their strategies might horrify us, but they work in the only currency that evolution recognizes: the continuation of genetic lineages through time. The offspring who survive these harsh parenting approaches often become remarkably successful adults themselves, having been tested and strengthened by experiences that would destroy creatures raised in more protective environments. They represent the ultimate expression of the idea that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, taken to extremes that most species couldn't survive. Yet even as we recognize the evolutionary success of these strategies, we can't help but feel disturbed by the implication. These creatures have traded what we consider the most precious aspects of family life: love, trust, protection, and emotional bonds for cold efficiency and reproductive success. They've achieved survival at the cost of everything that makes family relationships meaningful to us. The question that emerges from studying these extreme parenting strategies is whether our human approach to family life is an evolutionary advantage or a luxury that we can only afford because we've removed ourselves from the harsh selective pressures that shape these other species. Are our emotional bonds and protective instincts signs of evolutionary advancement, or are they weaknesses that would be quickly eliminated if we faced the same survival challenges as these creatures? These disturbing examples of animal parenting continue to challenge every assumption we have about family, care, and survival. They show us a world where love is a liability, where trust can be fatal, and where the most successful parents are those who can make the hardest decisions without emotional interference. It's a reality that exists parallel to our own, governed by rules that seem alien and horrifying, yet undeniably effective in the brutal mathematics of evolutionary success. The reality is that these extreme parenting strategies we've been exploring reveal something profound about the nature of survival itself. When we strip away all our human emotions and moral judgments, we're left with a stark truth that's both fascinating and deeply unsettling. These animals aren't making choices based on love, guilt, or conscience. They're operating according to biological programs that have been refined through millions of years of trial and error. But here's what really blows my mind about all of this. Every single one of these seemingly terrible parenting strategies has survived because they work. Not just work in some theoretical sense, but work so effectively that they've become the dominant approach for entire species across the globe. These aren't evolutionary mistakes or cruel accidents. They're success stories written in the language of survival. Think about what this means for a moment. The reed frogs who abandon their eggs in temporary puddles have been using this strategy for millions of years. Generation after generation of these tiny amphibians has thrived using what looks like complete parental neglect. The giant pandas who choose one cub and abandon the other have maintained stable populations for eons, using this heartbreaking selection process. The burying beetles who turn corpses into nurseries and eliminate excess offspring have dominated their ecological niches precisely because of these macabre parenting choices. And perhaps most remarkably, the seahorses who provide intensive prenatal care followed by complete abandonment have been successfully reproducing in some of the most challenging marine environments on Earth. These strategies aren't just surviving, they're thriving in ways that more conventional parenting approaches simply couldn't match. What makes this even more incredible is how these approaches have shaped the very nature of these species. The offspring who survive these harsh parenting strategies don't just become adults. They become incredibly resilient, adaptable creatures that are perfectly suited to their environments. They've been forged by necessity into survival machines that can handle challenges that would overwhelm animals raised with more protection and care. The baby reed frogs that make it through their abandoned childhood become incredibly resourceful amphibians, capable of thriving in unstable environments. The chosen panda cubs receive such intensive care that they develop into remarkably strong and capable adults. The surviving burying beetle larvae grow into incredibly efficient recyclers of nature's resources. And the seahorse babies who survive their first days of complete independence become some of the ocean's most adaptable creatures. So there you have it. Nature's most shocking parenting strategies that completely shatter everything we thought we knew about family bonds in the animal kingdom. From abandonment to sacrifice, from brutal selection to complete role reversals, these creatures have proven that successful parenting comes in forms we never imagined possible. The next time you see a nature documentary showcasing heartwarming family moments, remember that you're only seeing half the story. If this opened your eyes to the darker side of the natural world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing content that reveals the shocking truths hiding right under our noses. So there you have it, a journey through some of the most mind-bending parenting strategies in the entire animal kingdom. We've explored reed frogs who master the art of strategic abandonment, giant pandas who make impossible choices that would break our hearts, burying beetles who turn death into life in the most macabre way possible, and seahorses who completely flip everything we think we know about pregnancy and parental care. But here's the thing that should really blow your mind. Every single one of these strategies that seem so cruel and heartless to us has been tested by the ultimate judge, millions of years of evolution. These aren't parenting failures or evolutionary mistakes. These are success stories written in the language of survival, proven effective by countless generations of thriving offspring. The reed frogs creating perfect temporary nurseries, the pandas focusing all their energy on one chosen cub, the burying beetles engineering underground restaurants, and the seahorses providing intensive prenatal care followed by complete independence. These strategies work precisely because they seem to violate everything we believe about good parenting. What this teaches us is that nature operates by rules that are completely alien to our human understanding of family and love. There's no room for sentiment, no concern about fairness, no worry about hurt feelings. There's only the relentless drive to ensure that genetic material makes it to the next generation, no matter how shocking the methods might seem to us. These incredible creatures have shown us that successful parenting in nature isn't about following our human playbook of constant care and protection. Sometimes the best parent is the one who walks away. Sometimes love means making impossible choices, and sometimes the most devoted care leads to the most complete separation. The animal kingdom continues to amaze us with strategies that challenge everything we think we know about survival, family, and what it truly means to give your offspring the best possible chance at life. Nature's approach to parenting might shock us, but it's been working perfectly for millions of years.